Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 9th YouTube session of the Pixel Project's 9th International Women's Day edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. My name is Anusha Kandasivam. I'm your moderator for this session. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 13 award-winning and best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. I'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser and all of the exclusive author goodies we have a bit in a moment. But meanwhile, if you want to find out more about the Pixel Project, please go to our website, www.thepixelproject.net. All right, so we have a very special guest for today's live Read for Pixels discussion and Q&A session. It's the amazing mystery author, Naomi Hirahara. Here she is. Hi, Naomi.
Hello, everyone.
Thank you for being here. So I'm going to give everybody a little introduction, not that they need it. Naomi is an Edgar Award-winning author of multiple traditional mystery series. Her first historical mystery is Clark and Division, which, if I'm not mistaken, you can see behind her over there. And it won a Mary Higgins Clark Award. There it is. It's great. Naomi is a former journalist with the Rafu Shimpo newspaper, and she has also written numerous nonfiction history books and even a middle grade novel, 1001 Cranes. So aside from joining today's Read for Pixels live stream session, Naomi has also very generously donated some exclusive gifts to the stash of author goodies we have set up as treats for donors on our Rally Up fundraising page. So I'll tell you what they are. So the first thing is Naomi Hirahara's first edition starter bundle. Now, this has already been snapped up, but I'll tell you what it is. So Naomi has specially curated a bundle, and it contains one first edition hardcover of Clark and Division, one first edition paperback of An Eternal Lay, a Leilani Santiago Hawaii mystery, one first edition hardcover of We Are Here, 30 inspiring Asian, American, and Pacific Islanders who have shaped the United States, and one business card. And this has been snapped up by a donor, Carol O'Hara. And Carol has a little message that she put on our Rally Up page. I'm going to read it out now. She says, "Although I am not a new reader of Naomi's books, but rather a longtime fan and follower, I welcome the opportunity to support the causes she stands for, especially those that empower women and children. Thank you, Naomi, for your wonderful work and for continuing to be a role model for Asian Americans like myself. Kamate." Thank you so much, Carol, for your words. All right, so Naomi still has one more goodie for you to snap up. So this is a really amazing one. It's a 30-minute book and writing video chat with Naomi Hirahara, and this is available to donors worldwide. So Naomi has graciously donated 30 minutes of her time for a video chat session to be claimed by one Read for Pixels donor. She is happy to chat about the art and craft of writing and about books with you or with your group. The session will be conducted in English, and you may choose between Zoom or Skype, and it's open to individual donors or to writing groups. There's only one of this very rare donor treat available, so go and get it before anyone else. All these goodies are available on our Rally Up fundraising page. And yes, our intrepid producer has put the link up in the chat box, so go and check it out. We have had a bit of a slow start to our fundraiser. We've only raised $2,370, which is about 47% towards our $5,000 goal. And so the fundraiser ends on the 15th of April, so please do go and give generously. All the funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Now, before we start the reading and Q&A, one more thing is you, the audience, can participate. You can ask Naomi your questions. You just have to make sure that you are logged on to our your YouTube account so that you can type the questions in the chat box. And Juliana, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay your questions to me, and I'll read them out to Naomi. So over to you, Naomi. What will you be reading for us today?
Well, I'll be reading from Clark and Division, which is a book set in 1944 Chicago, and it follows Aki Ito, who's the younger sister. Her older sister is named Rose, and she's like the shining star, and Aki adores her. The Ito family, they live in Los Angeles, but during World War II are removed from their homes and they're detained like 120,000 other Japanese Americans in a camp. They are in California in a place called Manzanar. Rose leaves early, goes to Chicago, the second largest city in the US, and then Aki and her parents follow, only to discover something terrible has happened to Rose. So now it's up to Aki to figure out what happened to her sister, as well as carry her immigrant Japanese parents through this very chaotic period of their lives. So I'm going to be reading. Actually, this section is towards the end of the book, but I don't think it's giving, uh, you know, it's not revealing the whole mystery. But
Okay.
I like to read it to you. It's set in the south side of Chicago, where Aki's boyfriend, Art Nakasone, lives. And she and Art's sister Lois are sitting on the porch. Lois continued to stroke Crockett the cat in her rocking chair as Art and Mr. Nakasone piled into the pickup and drove away. She was like Art in that she was perfectly fine to sit in silence. So we did that for a while. As twilight descended, black men wearing work uniforms trudged home with their lunch pails, while younger ones riding on bikes called out to each other. Two Nisei, and that means second generation Japanese American girls, one obviously older than the other, strode down the sidewalk toward the house. Lois began to wave at the woman. The younger and smaller one only offered a weak wave back. She's one of my classmates, Betty, and that's her older sister, Elaine. They live in that green apartment building. We watched them cross the street. Betty was helping Daddy with his grocery business this summer, but she hasn't been coming around lately. She hasn't been feeling well. My mind whirled. Could this be the girl that Art had mentioned? Marge and the other Nisa women gathered outside the loading dock of the candy company had revealed that the attack victim was the younger of two sisters, and the name Betty sounded familiar. Was she the one who was? I felt bad bringing this up to Lois, who was only a teenager. She was mature enough to understand and nodded. Maybe she'll want to see your new kitty cat, I suggested. Ah, no, I don't think so. Art says not to bother her. But think how Crockett could cheer her up. I know my dog Rusty can make the darkest day brighter. At least that last statement was true. We should go over there, even if it's only for a minute. I know that I'd want to help a neighbor and classmate. I fixated on getting into the apartment. Surely there must be a clue that would tie this girl to Rose. Lois reluctantly agreed. I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it away. The sisters lived on the bottom floor, Lois explained to me as we approached their weathered door. The paint was peeling and a pie pan was hammered on the wall to hold mail. Lois gently knocked. It's me, Lois Nakasone. I brought over my new kitten that Betty might want to see. The door cracked open. Oh, Lois, said the older one, Elaine, I don't think this is a good time. I want to see the kitten. Betty's voice from within the apartment sounded high-pitched and frail. Well, only for a minute. The door was open to us. We walked into a one-room apartment with faded pink wallpaper. Clothes were hung on hooks on doors, pipes, and walls. The kitchenette consisted of one gas burner with a small, dingy icebox. A couple of plates, utensils, one pot and a pan were stored on a low table. I didn't see a sink or bathroom, so I figured that they had to share with other people in the building. Betty's pale face brightened when she saw the kitten. Her dark brown hair looked like it had been cut at home. Her bangs hung unevenly over her forehead. She was a child, nothing like the force of nature that Rose had been. The only thing they seemed to have in common was that they were Nisei women, so far from home. The two girls sat atop the bed. There was only one, and teased Crockett with a piece of loose yarn. I'm Aki, I introduced myself. I'm Art's friend. Elaine, whose wavy hair was up in a loose ponytail, introduced herself too. Since there was literally no place to sit, we stood and talked. What camp were you two in? I asked. Minidoka in Idaho. Before there, before that, we were in Camp Harmony. Where's that? Camp Harmony sounded like a more pleasant place than the other 10 camps. Oh, it's actually the fairgrounds in Puyallup near Seattle. That's the assembly center where they first sent us. Fairgrounds and racetracks. Those were temporary holding centers that our family had been able to bypass by going straight to Manzanar. I learned the sisters came from Seattle. We have relatives in Spokane, I said. That's nowhere near Seattle, is it? Oh, it's on the other side of Washington, Elaine said, but not in a disparaging way. She seemed to enjoy talking about her home state, the difference between the wet Pacific coastline and the middle of the state, which is full of cornfields. You're Rose Ito's sister? Elaine studied my face as if to find any resemblance. I'm so sorry. Yes, it's been terribly hard. I can imagine. She didn't kill herself, I added. I know that's what people are saying. I balled up my hands into fists as if I were preparing myself to jump from a diving board into a deep, dark pool. Someone hurt her even before she was killed by that subway car. I think I'll end it there. I don't want to read too much more.
All right. Thank you, Naomi. That was great. And yeah, you didn't really reveal a lot, but I think you gave, if anybody hasn't read the book, it's a lot of mystery that you kind of gave people to think about. So I would want to go and read the beginning of that book right now. Lots of interesting things happen. All right. So I'm going to jump right in with the questions. And my first question is about your female characters. So we just met Aki. She's really tough and resilient. And actually, your series are spearheaded by tough, resourceful, resilient female protagonists. There's Leilani Santiago, there's Aki that we met, Ellie Rush. And Ellie is actually the only one who is in law enforcement and a professional crime solver. They are all complex characters with their own driving forces, with agency, their own strengths, and their own weaknesses. So, who or what are your inspirations for your female characters?
Well, I really love the amateur sleuth. I like ordinary people. I say that I like to write about hidden individuals, people that are have these amazing histories, but it's unknown to others. And I think probably a lot of it's my own family history, not only my mother, but my father too. My father was a manual worker. He was a blue collar worker, and I felt very underestimated at times. And my mother, she is from Japan, but it came to the States. She was practically the only person, of her family here in this country, and was married to my father, and really had to probably kind of let go of some of her dreams because she didn't know how to work the system of a new country, to have me and my brother and kind of try to create a new life for herself in this country. So probably my mother is a big inspiration.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, um, you write mystery and crime, and this genre has its share of female stereotypes and tropes. In addition, the genre does not have many Japanese or Japanese American female detectives, whether professional or amateur. So, with protagonists like Leilani and Ellie and Aki, it's not a stretch to deduce that the risk of stereotyping is tripled when genre and gender and race intersect. How do you break stereotypes to create Asian female characters with agency who deal with the world around them, including situations that involve sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls, particularly with culturally prescribed gender roles for Asian women coming into play?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think in in terms of all of those characters, their
Mhm.
families are very important to them, and so that's, I think, a
Yeah.
cultural value. And I know for, like, especially Aki, she's very protective of her parents, because they are from another country. So it's yes. I think my characters may be a little different. Some of my colleagues, Asian American colleagues, choose to create like super women, like kick, who
Uh,
are have a lot of energy and have a lot of physical strength. I've chosen actually women who are maybe not that strong physically,
yeah,
and at times they even underestimate their own intelligence. But
yeah,
they have, but I feel I mean, I could relate to that character because
yes, yeah. I could too. Yeah.
I think, it's okay to show vulnerability because sometimes I think we go to extremes. Like, we don't want to be seen as the subservient geisha type. So we go
Mm-hmm.
back, we go to the other extreme. Okay, I'm going to be like a super heroine. But,
Mm-hmm.
how many of us, at least from the outside, are that kind of person? But I think
Yeah.
internally, I mean, we're a we're, our core is so strong, and we've had to endure so much, whether it's from outside discrimination, microaggressions, or a lot of trauma, around the world, especially people in Asia, during the World
Yeah.
War II era, has have gone through so much traumatic, trauma. So I think for many of us who are descendants of that kind of experience, we can't help but to internalize some of
Mm-hmm.
that intergenerational trauma. And so I think that might make us even more sensitive to what people, our seniors have gone through. So
Yeah.
how do we kind of um, manifest power in that context? That's something I'm very interested in exploring.
Actually, yeah, what you're saying is right. I'm Asian as well, and I'm Southeast Asian, and I really did, even though I'm definitely not Japanese American. I did uh, relate to your characters because of what you said. It's a cultural thing, and it's this very deep understanding of generational trauma, and and trying to protect your elders, and which is another cultural thing. Yeah. So yeah, pretty cool. Now, your female characters that you mentioned family just now, your female characters are generally tough and dogged in their pursuit of justice. Layla in particular, I've seen her described as grumpy or cantankerous in reviews, but she has to practically do everything. She takes care of her ill mother and her sisters, she runs the family business, she makes sure her employees are all right, she maintains a long distance relationship, and she solves mysteries. And readers may perceive all your characters as unlikable instead of lauding them as compelling and gritty characters, as they would do probably if they were male. And this is compounded by the fact that they're women of color. When you write your books, do you ever feel pressured by cultural and social stereotypes, social expectations to make your female characters relatable or likable?
I really don't. And I like them also to be physically, like, they may not be the most gorgeous or beautiful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
by, mainstream American standards. I
Yeah.
think they're beautiful, but they might have, a little bit of extra weight around their middle. That's like Leilani Santiago. But she's super, in her own way. She's okay, with her body the way it is, and I think that self acceptance is really important rather
Mm-hmm.
than being so self critical or seeking to harm herself to be really skinny. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that yeah, I want to impart in my characters.
Yeah. I think it does come across. So your books also depict pretty complex relationships between women, including female friendships and workplace relationships with camaraderie and complexity that will feel very real to female readers. They also include references to aspects of life that women have to navigate, including everything from romantic and family relationships to sexism in the workplace, for example. Why do you think that many authors, including mystery and crime authors, still have trouble writing stories that pass the Bechdel test, despite the fact that there are many more things that women talk about other than men?
I think that's a really good question. I think because for so long, our models in terms of story was, and we're still seeing it today. I mean, everybody loves like the lone man who kind of saves the day, and that's also seen in noir with Raymond Chandler and those
Yes.
kind of writers. So I think it's kind of been drummed into our DNA. The what I like to use as my models are actually my own friends, my own interactions with people. And when I look to that instead of what's been presented from the past, it's like my female friendships. And I like to show a complexity of friendships. We don't always, sometimes one trope is the two women who are competing, for a job, or two women who are competing for a guy. That's one of the tropes. But
Yeah.
especially in, like, I think Leilani Santiago, and also in the Ellie Rush series, friendships are really key to that. And of course, in Clark and Division, it's about sisterhood. Even though I don't even have a sister, but it's like
Uh-huh.
my conversation with people who are like the younger sister of a shining star, have
Yeah.
in, informed the way I wrote that.
Yeah. 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 I think you did really well. Like, I don't have a sister either, but I related to her because I have this amazing, beautiful, incredible best friend who is a shining star in every way, and I was like, oh, if anything happened to her,
Mm,
I would go and solve the mystery
that's right.
myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question would, but could Anusha rise to the occasion? That would be the arc.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that would be the arc. Huh. Awesome. I think she could. All right. So we've been talking about your female characters. Let's talk about the men in your book. Um, there are a wide variety of male characters in your books, ranging from the sexist and misogynistic to those who respect their female colleagues and friends and associates as their equals. Do you think reframing how stories describe men away from hostile and toxic stereotypes and towards complexity and even vulnerability can be one of the ways mystery and crime writers can break away from toxic tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women in the genre?
For sure. And I think also a lot of Asian men in like crime fiction, they're like the um evil, like gangster, the heartless
Yeah.
villain, and I personally was very close to my own father. He encouraged me, actually I have a whole series that features a Japanese American gardener like my father, this underestimated person who solves crimes. And I think, um, I mean, sure, there are Asian men who have abused women for sure, and there is
Yes.
there is that kind of toxicity that has existed. But on the other hand, I mean, I've experienced, and my husband and I have male friends
Mhm.
who are extremely supportive, of women, and see friendships not as a hierarchical thing but more of an equal relationship. So I think it's important to show that, because I for a number of reasons. One is to just affirm the men who don't have that kind of toxic masculinity, and to say that, hey, you're still masculine, even though you have the sensitive side or emotive side, right? And also
Yes.
to show the mainstream culture, like, don't just cast us as these geisha, wilting geisha types with these domineering men, because that could be a stereotype of its own.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Um, do you think then that eventually this violent alpha male type character would phase out of mystery and crime books as cultures worldwide start kicking out toxic masculinity, or do you think it's one of the stereotypes that's going to stick around?
I think there unfortunately will always be that. I mean, it's just like we were thinking that the whole notion of, like law enforcement or police procedural type mysteries would
Mhm.
kind of go by the wayside because of the things that have been happening in America for the past couple years, for people speaking out about police violence. But I think for some reason, people just can't let go of that trope. But I think that there's more of a diversity. It's not that just one trope that is gaining popularity. So I think that there can be change in that area.
All right. All right. So let's talk about genre in particular. So books and stories in the mystery, crime, thriller genre usually involve some kind of violence, including violence against women. In your opinion, can mystery, crime, and thriller stories be used to address the issue of sexism, misogyny, and violence against women? And if so, how?
Well, like Clark and Division was actually inspired by a report, historic report that I had come across. It was from the mid 40s. It was from the Chicago Resettlers Committee, and it was a Japanese American group, and they were concerned about juvenile delinquency within the community. Before World War II, there had been around 400 Japanese Americans in Chicago, and during the diaspora from these World War II detention camps to
Mhm.
Chicago, that population increased to 20,000 people, Japanese Americans.
Wow.
And the first ones to leave were the young people because they were American citizens. And without family, without parents to kind of watch over them, things happened. So among the crimes were um, babies being born out of wedlock. There was abortion, which was illegal at the time, and then there was a sex maniac. That's how they called them, who had assaulted like several women. And
Mhm.
these kind of things shocked me because I never really knew about. I work as a historian in the community, hadn't
Yeah.
really heard about that. So it just made me think that at these kind of traumatic history points, that a lot of times women are the ones who are really victimized, and we don't. And even within our community, and unfortunately, these things, it's like shameful, to talk about
Mhm.
them. And
Mhm.
since the perpetrator was an Issei, people didn't want to out him, maybe, or
Mhm.
there was distrust of the police. So
Mhm.
it was very complex. So I thought it was important in Clark and Division to kind of, I mean, even though I will never know who that person was, to at least acknowledge there had been women who had suffered this kind of assault,
Mhm.
at a time where they couldn't really speak out.
Mhm. Yeah. Um, so, like you said, that you do feature violence in your stories, but it's never on the page. It's very clear something has happened, but it's never described fully on the page. How do you think mystery, crime, and thriller authors can tackle the issue of violence against women without falling back on harmful stereotypes and tropes or depicting violence gratuitously?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I had to think too because some of my colleagues, my women friends, they don't even want to show a female victim. They feel that is a trope in itself. But for Clark and Division, I had to, because I'm kind of addressing a real life incident in which women were victimized, I had to have a female victim.
Mm-hmm.
I think, we always have to tread that careful line of not um, celebrating the things that we are criticizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, uh,
Glorifying the violence.
exactly,
Yeah.
right. So I'm more of an intuitive writer. So I kind of intuitively just go with what I feel is respectful. I think we need to have respect, especially for the victims. Even if our victim was not a nice person, or even a man, I try to show some respect towards that
Even a man.
character. Yeah, towards that
Yeah,
character because they're a human being, right?
yeah. It's really weird how people tend to forget that women are people.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right. So in 2018, the Staunch Prize, which is an award set up to recognize crime and thriller novels without violence against women, was launched, and it faced criticism from major crime novelists like Val McDermid, who believe that as long as there is violence against women in the world, it should be reflected in fiction. What is your take on the idea that mystery, crime, and thriller books can work without some form of violence against women? Do you think it's feasible given some of the long-standing genre conventions and tropes?
Wow, that's a really good question. I probably Val McDermott felt like she didn't want her writing to be regulated. I mean, I'm just assuming maybe that was maybe her kind of reasoning, as well as the what she stated.
Mhm.
Um, I I think that a part of me does feel that as long as there is violence against women, it's just like um, that recent movie, like Women Talking, right?
Oh yeah.
That there has to be, we can't minimize it, we
Mhm.
can't ignore it, but I guess we can devise different ways to talk about it. But I do agree that the talk should not be eliminated.
Mhm.
But maybe it's like a challenge for us who are sensitive to this issue to figure out different ways to weave it into our stories.
All right. That's a good answer. All right. So just a reminder for everyone watching, you can ask Naomi your questions. So please do leave your questions in the chat box. We're kind of at the halfway point here, so you don't want to miss your chance. Uh, all right. So while we wait for your questions, I'm gonna go on to the rest of mine. So let's talk about stories. So stories can be one of the most powerful ways of bringing about social change because they can help change cultural narratives and perspectives about social issues and traditions. How do you find a balance? Well, actually, I kind of asked you this already, so I'm gonna go to the next one. How do you have any tips or opinions on how authors can strike a balance in their storytelling between raising awareness about human rights issues such as violence against women while telling an engaging story without being pedantic or preachy?
Mm. Well, I think if you get to the core of, well, I think one thing that's really important is relationships.
Yep.
If you could like show how a character, perhaps, the victim or the sleuth, how they uh, have built, a friendship or a life with another character. I think that's how people can relate to what we write about. I remember that on my first book, I one person had just said, "Oh, this character is a curmudgeon, blah 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 blah." But they said that they really miss. I mean, that was a male character, but they said they really missed him. And I thought, oh, that's the power of fiction versus nonfiction. That the reader herself or himself, themselves, will form this relationship with our protagonists and can actually walk in their shoes and kind of start to look at things differently. And sometimes you can't do that quite in nonfiction, so.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take a little detour here and ask you because you mentioned women talking just now. Um, would you have any movies or books that you would recommend for people that deal with this topic of violence against women in a subtle way or in a way that doesn't show too much violence on the screen on the page?
Well, you're really putting me on the spot now.
Sorry.
That's a really good. Well, um, there was a Netflix series. I think it's unbelievable. Um, it was
Unbelievable. Yes. Yeah.
yes. I
It,
thought that was really well done, and
yeah.
actually, that that particular series was helpful.
Mhm.
Basically, it was showing the victims how difficult, she had been raped, and it she was dealing with the aftermath, right, and how it affected her. And at the same time, there are these two female detectives who had uncovered this other rapes that was connected to her assailant. But a lot of these kind of crime shows, they spend time with the assailant, and you kind
Yeah.
of see them as a real person, and sometimes you start feeling some empathy towards like a serial killer, like Jeffrey Dahmer or someone like that.
Uh-huh.
When you really when But in that particular series, it almost wasn't that important. I mean,
Yes.
like that you solved exactly who it was. You wanted the assailant to be caught,
Yeah.
but you didn't really get into his life. And then I thought that was very interesting, and I kind of integrated some of that technique in
Mm.
Clark and Division,
Yeah.
because I didn't, really want to be that sympathetic towards
Hmm.
um, the attacker, you know. And I thought, you know what, it's okay. It's okay, because it's really the story about Aki and Rose and the other
Yes.
women in this community. And also the larger historic kind of a struggle that they deal with of being forcibly relocated from their homes. So that's actually the larger crime. There are two crimes kind of taking place. So yeah, but so in that way, I think I was bucking. Usually, in some of these puzzle mysteries, like a Agatha Christie, right? You want to see, oh, okay, it could be that person, that person, that
Mhm.
person, and it becomes more of an intellectual exercise, which is perfectly fine. But I think what I'm trying to get at is to write more emotional mysteries,
Mhm.
so that the whole point, although you want to hit certain plot points, but uh, I want to take my reader into like this emotional journey, so they kind of have a sense of this woman that they're following throughout the course of the story.
Mm. All right. So we have a few questions coming in from the audience. I'm going to go to this one first. It's from Regina, who's one of our producers and also the founder of Pixel Project. She says, "Hi, Naomi. As a historian, do you think that writers who write historical fiction have a responsibility to address sexism, misogyny, and violence against women in their stories, since history is rarely kind to women?"
Hmm. That's a great question. I personally, I mean, obviously, when I saw that historical report,
Mhm.
it moved me to kind of create a story. So obviously, for myself, and being a woman myself, and I think in a way that sometimes stories come to us like they're meant for us to tell them. Um, so I think those kind of experiences will always be happening in my personal life as a historian. I, in terms of I can't speak to the experience or viewpoints of other people, but I think also, though, right now, with more interest and awareness about the Me Too movement, there are more stories like this. One of my uh, girlfriends, fellow writer, Winnie, has written a couple books. One was based on her own sexual assault, and she's written another book on complicit about the Me Too movement in Hollywood from an
Mm.
Asian American woman's point of view. I mean, that's not historical, but it's a
Yeah.
part of her personal history, I think.
Mhm. Right. Next question is from, oh, hold on. It's from Misty306. So Misty is one of our regulars. Hi, Misty. And Misty always asks the question. So Misty asks, why do you believe historical fiction has been able to gain so much popularity across so many literary genres like historical fantasy and time travel romance in recent years?
Well, it's quite interesting during the pandemic. I think that the future is so unknown to us. I, we kind of try to look back. And I think some of it is for hope or some
Mm,
kind of optimism. Like when I look at my elders and the things that they've survived, it helps me. My parents were atomic bomb survivors, so when
mm,
I mean, right, that what could be more devastating than that? But we're able to survive that and have really fruitful lives. So I think some of it is um, to gain a sense of hope from the past because you don't want to just live in the dystopian future.
mhm,
I think also is to understand ourselves more because so much of our history has been told from one lens and we don't get a sense of our own power. I'm working on a book right now, and it's one of the characters is going to be based on a real life Japanese silent film star, like
mm,
from the early 1900s in America. I mean, she's super popular, and she married another Japanese silent film star, Setsue Hayakawa.
mm.
And it's like, I mean, so long we've been told, oh, like Asian women, they haven't been able to break the barriers of Hollywood or whatnot. But actually, it had been done,
Yeah,
at different periods of time. But unfortunately, other forces kind of extinguished those accomplishments.
yeah,
So sometimes I think we have to reclaim our history. It's not necessarily like just this progression. I think it's gone up and down, and to also kind of fight against the movement for our power and empowerment to dissipate. I think unfortunately we have to be super conscious. I mean, it's not. I mean, it'd be nice if we could all, kind of relax. I mean, we need to do self care, but I think we have to be super intentional and always be committed to uh, uh, making the world to improve the world because
mhm,
without that intention it kind of sinks back to a bad place.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, you're right. That's a good answer. All right, so we've kind of come to the end of our session. I have two more questions for you, Naomi. Um, so it's actually a two-part question. So you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti-violence work against women, anti-violence against women work. Sorry. Um, the first thing is a bit of a Captain Obvious question, but we ask everyone this. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
um, because we should not be victimized. We need to and I'm an older person too, and I want a better present
Mm,
for younger people as well.
yeah, of course. All right, so what do you think authors such as yourself can do to help with the cultural change needed to eradicate violence against women and girls?
As an author, it's just to tell our stories, and since so many of my stories are based on history,
Mhm,
it's like reshaping our paradigm because I think the things that we've absorbed are actually untrue. And I
mm,
think if we are better able to embrace all the generations of women, throughout history. I think it will give us a, a larger sense. I mean, it will help us to stand even stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good answer. All right, so that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, Naomi, for answering all our questions, and thank you everybody for asking your amazing questions. Uh, Hi, I'm back.
Mhm.
So before we wrap up, I'm gonna tell you again about the amazing swag that Naomi has donated to us that you can get your hands on our Rally Up fundraising page. Um, so Naomi actually has donated a first edition starter bundle, which is a bundle of three books and a business card. And these are first edition hardcovers or paperbacks. Now, this one has been snapped up by Carol O'Hara, but there is still one more goodie available for you. So this is a 30-minute book and writing video chat with Naomi Hirahara. And this is available for donors worldwide. Naomi has graciously donated a 30-minute video chat session where she'll be happy to chat about the art and craft of writing or and about books. It's available. You can choose between Zoom or Skype for this session, and the session will be conducted in English, and it's open to individual donors or to writing groups. Now, there's just one of this very rare donor treat available, so please go and get it before someone else does. We have also plenty more goodies available from authors and publishers, including Kimberly Bell, Liz Williams, Sonali Dev, Chloe Lees, Angela Ryuko Smith, Adi Bajagrada, Carol Goodman, Liana Renee Herber, Romina Gerber. We have bundles from Entangle Publishing and from Black Spot Books and more. And new goodies are going to be released every week throughout the month, and throughout this month. And the fundraiser ends on 15th of April. Now, I said before we had a kind of a slow start to our fundraiser. We've only raised 2,370 towards our $55,000 goal, which is slightly less than half. So please do go give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. And I'm going to share a little slide for you. There it is. So you can donate to get these goodies. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong slide. That's the one. So that's the that's the link, tinyurl.com/r4prallyup IWD 2023. The link is up in the chat box as well. So go and click on that. If you want to learn more about Read for Pixels, about the other authors that we're going to have on, please go to our Read for Pixels page, and the link is up in the chat box as well. Right, and I also want to tell you about our Shirley Jackson Award nominated and Audie Award nominated first short story anthology that's Giving the Devil His Due. That's the slide. It's sort of like The Twilight Zone meets Promising Young Woman, and it features amazing short stories from 16 authors, including people like Stephen Graham Jones, Kelly Armstrong, Linda D. Addison, Hiro Monahan, and so many more. The anthology is available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook for order from major booksellers worldwide, including Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Book Depository, and more. Audiobook fans, you can go to Spotify, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Audible, and so many more. I think it's on all of them. For paperback fans, we have teamed up with 12 of the 16 authors to offer an exclusive limited edition bookplate for early bird buyers. Each author will sign 16 bookplates, and it'll be on a first-come, first-served basis. Each bookplate includes a resource for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors in 205 countries. So this over here is the link to find out about Giving the Devil His Due and how you can score a bookplate. And this one over here is the link to find out more about the audiobook and where you can get it. And all the links are going up in our chat box. So remember that all net proceeds go towards keeping the Pixel Project's campaigns, programs, and initiatives such as this one alive and kicking. And if you want to find out more about the Pixel Project, about violence against women, about how you can help to end it, please go to our website. We have lots of resources. It's www.thepixelproject.net. All right, so the last thing is, I think, Naomi, you have an announcement.
Oh, yeah. The follow-up to Clark and Division Evergreen, which takes place in 1946 Los Angeles, will be coming out in August. So stay tuned, especially if you've read Clark and Division. You can find out what happened to Aki.
Yeah, can't wait. Awesome. So that's in August. All right. So all that remains is to say thank you once again, Naomi. Thank you so much for being with us and answering our questions. Thank you, audience, for being here and asking your questions. And we're going to say good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world, and goodbye.